I met Daniel on a rainy Tuesday in a crowded coffee shop, the kind of meet-cute that romantic comedies are built upon. He spilled his espresso on my laptop, panicked, and insisted on buying me a new one. I laughed it off, but he was persistent, charming, and by the end of the week we were having dinner. By the end of the month I was falling in love. By the end of the year we were engaged. He was everything I had ever wanted, kind, ambitious, supportive. He believed in my dream of opening my own boutique interior design firm, encouraged me when I was ready to quit, celebrated my small victories as if they were his own. For 5 years I thought I had found the one. For 5 years I was blind. I, Elena Vance, had built a successful business from nothing but talent and grit. Vance Interiors was my baby, my identity, my legacy. I started in a tiny studio apartment, taking on small projects, building a portfolio, earning every client through word of mouth and sheer determination. By the time Daniel came into my life, I was on the verge of something big. A major hotel chain had reached out, interested in a nationwide redesign. It was the kind of contract that could set me up for life, that could transform my small firm into a national player. Daniel was there every step of the way, helping me prepare the proposal, reviewing the numbers, offering feedback on the designs. He was my partner in every sense of the word, or so I believed. The contract was signed. The initial payment, a staggering $2 million, hit my business account. I was euphoric. We celebrated with champagne, with plans for the future, with whispered promises of forever. 2 weeks later, the money was gone. Not slowly, not in small, traceable amounts. All of it. Wiped out in a single, devastating transaction that I had not authorized. I stared at my bank statement, my mind refusing to process the numbers. I called the bank, my voice shaking. Fraud, they said. They would investigate. I hung up and turned to Daniel, expecting comfort, expecting shared outrage. What I saw in his eyes stopped my heart. It wasn't shock. It wasn't concern. It was something else. Something cold. Something final. I'm sorry, Elena, he said, his voice devoid of the warmth I had cherished for 5 years. I really did love you, but I needed this. He walked out, just like that. No explanation. No goodbye. Just the slam of a door and the echo of my shattered world. The investigation revealed the truth, a truth so calculated, so cruel, that it felt like a physical wound. Daniel wasn't Daniel. He was Marcus Webb, a professional con artist with a history of targeting successful women. He had spent 5 years building a life with me, not out of love, but out of strategy. He had studied me, learned my patterns, gained my trust, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. The $2 million was gone, laundered through a maze of offshore accounts that would take years, if ever, to unravel. My business was bankrupt. The hotel contract was voided. My reputation was in ruins. I lost everything. Not just the money, not just the business. I lost my sense of self, my ability to trust, my belief in love. I spent months in a fog of grief and rage, replaying every moment, every conversation, every touch, searching for the clues I had missed. There were none. He was that good. He had played the role of the perfect partner so flawlessly that even now, knowing the truth, I couldn't see the seams. The authorities caught him 6 months later, thanks to another victim, another woman whose life he had dismantled. He was convicted, sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. I sat in the courtroom, watching him stand there in his orange jumpsuit, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No closure. Just an empty, hollow space where my heart used to be. 12 years. He would be out in 8 with good behavior. He would be relatively young, free to start again, free to find another victim. Meanwhile, I was left with nothing but debt and despair. The system had failed me. Justice had failed me. I realized, sitting in that sterile courtroom, that if I wanted true reckoning, I would have to build it myself. I would have to become something I never imagined being. I would have to become his equal. Not in crime, but in cunning. Not in cruelty, but in calculation. He had spent 5 years studying me. I would spend the next 8 studying him. I would learn everything about Marcus Webb, his history, his patterns, his weaknesses, his fears. I would wait, patient as a spider, and when he walked out of those prison gates, I would be there. Not for revenge, not for violence, for something far more devastating. I would take from him what he had taken from me, his future. I spent the next 8 years rebuilding my life, but not the way anyone expected. I didn't return to interior design. That Elena was dead. Instead, I took a different path. I went back to school, studying forensic accounting and cybersecurity. I learned how money moved through the shadows, how identities were built and destroyed, how the digital world could be a weapon or a shield. I became an expert in the very things he had used against me. I also became a student of Marcus Webb. I visited him in prison, not as a victim seeking closure, but as a researcher studying a specimen. He was confused at first, then wary, then, over time, almost comfortable. I was Elena, the woman he had wronged, and I was there to understand. He talked. They always talk when they think they have nothing left to lose. He told me about his methods, his strategies, his other victims. He told me about the offshore accounts, the fake identities, the network of collaborators who had helped him disappear my money. He didn't realize that every word was a thread I was weaving into a rope that would hang him. I documented everything, building a file that would make the FBI's investigation look amateur. I also built something else. A new life, a new identity, a new purpose. I created a consulting firm specializing in financial forensics, helping other victims of fraud recover what was stolen. I became the person I had needed 8 years ago. I found purpose in pain, meaning in loss. I helped dozens of women reclaim their lives, their money, their dignity. But always, in the back of my mind, was Marcus. Always, I was counting the days until his release. The call came on a Tuesday, just like the day we met. A notification from the prison system. Marcus Webb had been granted early release for good behavior. He would be out in 30 days. I hung up the phone and sat in silence, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm of resolve. The waiting was over. The hunt was about to begin. He thought he had served his time, paid his debt to society. He had no idea that his true reckoning was just beginning. He had no idea that the woman he had destroyed had spent 8 years becoming something he could never imagine. He had no idea that Elena Vance, the victim, the fool, the broken-hearted girl, was dead. In her place stood someone else, someone patient, someone prepared, someone who knew every secret he had ever buried. The ghost of his past was about to become the architect of his future, and he would never see her coming. I tracked his first move before he even made it. Through my network of contacts and the digital surveillance I had quietly maintained, I knew he was reconnecting with his old network, the same collaborators who had helped him launder my money. They were small-time players now, aging and desperate, easy to manipulate. I became one of them, not in person, but in the digital shadows. I created a persona, a fictional fence named Victor, who had connections to larger operations. I reached out to Marcus through encrypted channels, offering him a way back into the game. He was cautious at first, suspicious, but I knew his weaknesses. I knew he was broke, that his old partners had moved on, that he was desperate for the kind of score that would set him up for life. I dangled a target. A wealthy tech executive with a history of reckless investments and a fortune in liquid assets. It was fictional, of course, but I made it real enough. I created bank statements, social media profiles, a digital footprint that would fool anyone. Marcus took the bait. He always did. He spent 6 months planning the heist, working with Victor to gather intelligence, to case the mark, to build the perfect con. I watched every move, documented every conversation, recorded every plan. He was meticulous, just as he had been with me, but this time he was dancing on a stage I had built, and the audience was about to arrive. The night of the planned heist, I was there. Not as Elena, not as Victor, as myself. I waited in the parking lot of the abandoned warehouse he had chosen as his staging ground. I watched his car pull up, watched him get out, watched the old confidence in his stride. He looked good for a man who had spent 8 years in prison. Healthy, strong, dangerous. I stepped out of the shadows. He froze. Recognition dawned slowly, then all at once. "Elena," he breathed, his voice a mixture of shock and something else. Fear. "Hello, Marcus," I said. "It's been a while." He glanced around, looking for an escape, for an explanation. "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" "I never lost you," I said, my voice calm. "I've been watching you for 8 years. Every conversation, every plan, every move you've made since you got out. I know everything, Marcus." His face hardened, the old con man's mask sliding into place. "So what? You're going to call the cops? I'll be out again in a few years. This changes nothing." I smiled. It was not a warm smile. "I'm not here to call the cops. I'm here to offer you a choice." I pulled out a folder, thick with documents, and handed it to him. He opened it, his eyes scanning the pages. His face went pale. It was everything. The plans for the heist. The conversations with Victor. The offshore accounts he had set up. The names of his collaborators. All of it. "This goes to the FBI in 1 hour," I said, "unless you agree to my terms." He looked up, his eyes wide with a fear I had never seen in him. "What terms?" "You will transfer everything you have left. Every dollar, every asset, every hidden account. To a foundation I have established for victims of fraud. You will sign a confession, in full, detailing every crime you have ever committed, and you will disappear. You will leave the country and never return. If I ever see your face again, if I ever hear your name connected to another crime, this file goes public, and you will spend the rest of your life in prison." He stared at me, his mind racing, searching for an exit. There was none. I had built this cage myself, brick by brick, over 8 years. "You have 5 minutes to decide," I said. He signed. There was no fight left in him. The transfer was completed within hours, millions of dollars flowing from his hidden accounts into the foundation I had created. The confession was recorded, notarized, and locked in a vault. He left the country the next day, a ghost fleeing a ghost. I watched his plane take off, and I felt something I had not felt in 8 years. Peace. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Just a quiet, clean peace. The money I recovered was distributed to his victims, including me. I used my portion to reopen Vance Interiors, not as a business, but as a foundation. We train women who have been victims of fraud, teaching them the skills they need to rebuild their lives. We provide grants, education, and support. We turn pain into purpose, loss into legacy. I still think about him sometimes, not with anger, but with a strange, distant curiosity. He was a monster, but he was also a teacher. He taught me that love can be a weapon. He taught me that trust must be earned, not given. He taught me that the only person who can truly destroy you is yourself. And in learning those lessons, I found a strength I never knew I had. The last I heard, Marcus was living in South America, running a small tour company, keeping his head down. He knows, I think, that I am still watching. He knows that one wrong move, one more victim, and the file will find its way to the authorities. He lives in a cage of his own making, and I hold the key. That is my revenge. Not his destruction, but his containment. Not his suffering, but his awareness that his freedom is borrowed, conditional, fragile. He will spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, wondering if today is the day I decide to end it. And I will spend the rest of mine building something beautiful from the ashes he left behind. That is the price of trust. That is the cost of betrayal. And that finally is justice.